Podcast Answer Man, episode number, well, I'm not quite sure. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Podcast Answer Man. My name is Cliff Ravenscraft, and as I said in the intro here, not exactly sure what episode number this is that's because I am recording this during a 24-hour podcast marathon, but I'm very excited to tell you who my guest is today. I am very honored and very delighted to have a guest host on the Podcast Answer Man today, all the way from Amersfoort in the Netherlands, our great friend, Father Roderick. Father Roderick, welcome to the Podcast Answer Man.
Hey, Cliff. How are you doing?
I've never been better, and it gets better every single minute of the day.
Wonderful.
So what time is it there in Amersfoort right now? Is it about 6 a.m.?
It's 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock
in the morning.
Wonderful.
I'm just about to do my morning run, and but before that, of course, I wanted to talk to you. Or you wanted to talk to me, and I wanted to talk to you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that we're finally getting a chance to talk, and I just want to tell folks, and I'm sure you know this because I've shared it with you before, and I think I even did a My Crazy Life devoted to why I like the Daily Breakfast and what you've done to inspire me in podcasting. So, but for those who are listening to the Podcast Answer Man, if you haven't heard me talk about Father Roderick before, he's among the first of those who I listened to as far as people that I subscribed to a podcast. I think it was Leo Laporte, and then there was a Lost podcast, and then Father Roderick was right behind. And Father Roderick, I think I came around just before you started the Daily Breakfast, right during the transition from starting up a new feed of the Daily Breakfast. And honestly, I think over the course of the years, I've only missed maybe 4 or 5 episodes of your show.
I've got a special medal right here for you that I'm going to send you because I don't think there are many people that have listened to all of those podcasts.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've been, and I'm sure that you'll say the same thing because I've heard you say it. But I think you and I have been on this virtual mutual inspiration to each other in the field of podcasting and technology.
Yeah, I feel that somehow we're among the dinosaurs of podcasting, and we started off when it was still a very unknown technology, and bit by bit we've been getting better, and we've learned along the way and gathered the community, and we've seen the whole transition from, at first we were mostly, occupied with how are we going to do this technically, how to improve the sound quality, the format of our shows. And over the years, we've become more and more community builders, and it's much more about the social aspect of what we do. Because we kind of know how to do it technically now.
Exactly. The matter of fact, I remember who had time to build community in the beginning because it was like 5 to 6 hours worth of work for each show that we produced. Oh, yeah. I think that we both started off recording stuff and then going back in post-production in an editor and then just cutting out everything that we didn't like. And of course, when you first start to podcast or do any form of communication and you listen back to yourself, you're like, oh, my goodness, do I really sound like that? All the ums and all the mistakes, and let's re-record this. And then we would spend hours and hours, at least I would, but I assume you too, cutting out all the little mistakes and pauses, and it would make the whole thing in our mind very, very smooth and well produced. But other people would tell us, well, this is overproduced, it sounds so artificial, and please keep in all the mistakes, because that's what makes podcasting so different from radio and regular media, and it makes it more real. Absolutely, and that was the same exact feedback that I got. It's like, listen, the reason why we started listening to you and subscribed to your show wasn't because you're doing all this editing. It's because you're real and you're transparent, and when you make a mistake, we hear it, and we don't feel like you're better than us, like some of these radio personalities out there make us feel. Like they're somebody that we must bow down to.
Well, I still like it when people bow down to me, but let's not talk about that.
That's funny you say that, and I know you say that in jest, but there's always some truth in when it comes to making jest of something. I don't know about you, Father Roderick, but in the beginning, I really did struggle with a big head.
Oh, really?
I did. I not like really pompous and it's like bow down to me, but I did. All of a sudden, people who would all of a sudden just subscribe and listen, and all of a sudden I felt like a little bit more important. I felt like I was a little bit more important than maybe I thought I should have been.
I've always been brought up with the sense of, well, please don't grow your ego in any way, shape, or form. And I must admit that I was very surprised that people even took the time to listen to me. I was like, who am I? I'm just this Dutch guy. Of course, I was also a little bit insecure because English is not my native language, and so I would often make mistakes, and I still do in vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and so it was always kind of a challenge to make a recording and to put it out there. And then I was always afraid that people would email me, "Oh, you said this wrong and you did this wrong." So I think that kept my ego in check.
Well, that was the next step, and it didn't take me too long before somebody took a big, huge straight pen and popped the bubble and says, "Wait a second, you're nobody special here, buddy." And as a podcaster, I know you've shared this in your show over the years, and I've seen it with so many other podcasters, and certainly those who have listened to us for any amount of time know that we as podcasters are not immune to some very negative feedback from our audience.
Oh yeah, sure. People are very direct in all forms of internet communication because they don't realize that there's actually a living person in front of them, and they would never say those things when they would be standing right in front of you, but they do when they are posting, an email or posting on a blog. And well, you learn to deal with it. It hurts, especially when you're not used to that kind of comment. I mean, I have my parishioners. I'm a priest in a parish, in a number of parishes here, and people in Holland, at least in the part where I live, are very direct. And so you often get criticism, but it's never as blunt and as outrageous as some of the criticism that you would get on the internet by people that you don't even know.
Absolutely.
Who are you? And why do you even bother to write this?
Yeah, it is. It's amazing, and as strong as we try to be, and the fact that we understand that we're not going to be able to please everyone, it still affects us, and I'm just glad that over the years we've not that we're immune to it, but we're definitely I think we have thicker skin. Would you say?
Yeah, thicker skin, and also, dealing with negative feedback could have a positive effect in the way that there's always something that motivates people to write. So even if for 99% we think, that is your problem and that is how you feel, there's always this 1% that might give us an idea on how to improve our shows. And that is usually how I try to spin it for myself, even though at first I can yell at an email. I was like, "What? How do you dare to write me that?" But then after a while, after a day or so, and after some prayer, I calmed down and it's like, well, there might be something in there. And so the trick is not to get discouraged by negative email, and at the same time take from it what could help to improve your show. And it made me also aware that you can never please everyone, which I desperately tried to do at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And that was, I think, one of the things that made it sound so stilted and so artificial, because I was trying to be this radio personality. Even in I cannot listen back to the first episodes of The Catholic Insider, because I'm like, Catholic Insider, number 1. And it's like, who is this? Who are you trying to be, man? Just be yourself. But I was trying to please my audience because I imagined that was the kind of style that I thought people would like. And the trick is to be yourself, and at the same time also be very critical about what you do. And I try to do that also while listening to other podcasts, and ask myself all the time, why do I like this show? Or what irks me? why don't I like this part of the show or this style or this particular item, and then look in the mirror and see, well, perhaps I'm doing the same, and perhaps I can learn something from this. So to me, it's always listening to podcasts is not just to entertain myself, but it's also a learning process, being very critical in a constructive way. Of course, I would never write a podcast or like, oh, that was the most horrible show that I've ever listened to. But I think it's in feedback, we always have to try to encourage and only give feedback, perhaps negative feedback or corrective feedback, I would call it, when people ask for it. When another podcaster would ask me, so what do you think of my show? Be honest. Then I would be honest. I would say, well, okay, I'm going to tell you my point of view is just my point of view, and I'm not representative for the rest of your audience, but here's what I think. Here's the good stuff, and here's the stuff that you could improve. And I hope that people will do that with me as well when I ask them, and within the SQPN community with the board members. We are very frank, and I've had to swallow a lot of my pride over the years because I'm the wacky guy with the weird ideas and no sense of realism. So I always plan on doing the most outrageous projects, and then the board is fortunately there to tell me, well, first of all, we don't think that this is a good idea. There will not be an audience. You like it, but who else? And you don't have time, and let's focus, and that really helps me. And after a while, I have to, admit they're right, and I'm glad that other people give me that correction, because otherwise I would just gallop away in the distance and never come back.
Very cool. Well, I'll tell you, I'm glad that you have that accountability, and I have I don't necessarily have a board here at GSPN.TV.
You have your wife. That is worth, right?
My wife is very good at keeping me in check when it comes to swallowing my pride. But let me ask you, because this is for the podcast Answer Man, and so we have a whole gamut of people who are listening to this particular episode of the show, and I know I like to really inspire the folks who are out there who are listening. They're thinking about getting started, or they've just started, and they really are interested in some of the more technical details that I used to share back when I got started. But let me go ahead and ask you, how did you first hear about podcasting? And as far as what was your first podcast, where did you hear about it? Do you remember any of those details?
Oh yeah. I got an email just before Christmas in 2004. And it was from a parishioner of mine who is a venture capitalist. So he's used to checking out the new exciting initiatives and put money in it. And I was just new. I think I'd just arrived in the parish, and I came from Rome. I had done communication studies over there, but never figured that I would end up doing what I do right now. And so in that email, that person wrote, well, hey, have you ever heard of podcasting? And you know Adam Curry? Well, he's doing something. It's like radio on a USB stick or something like that. It was like a vague description. I was like, what? But it sounded intriguing. So I'm not even sure if Google was around. I suppose so. Yeah, I assume it was. And so I found a website I think it was about RSS feeds and Adam Curry, and it popped up. I didn't even get to his site, but somehow I found out where these files were located, these MP3 files. I listened to them, and at the time, Adam Curry was still talking a lot about these new developments. That was the contents of his show. It was a source code, so it was very technical, and it was about, so what can we do with this, and what equipment, and how do you post it, how do you make an RSS feed? I didn't know all these things. I mean, I was tech savvy, so I had a computer, and I knew how to program websites and design and stuff, but I'd never done anything with audio, let alone digital audio and RSS feed. So with a bit of tampering, I figured out, so that's how it works. And at the same time, I was asked to come to Rome, to the Vatican, on a congress about the church and the media. And while I was still in Rome, I've gotten to know some people in the Vatican, and I talked about my internet projects and everything, as I was already building websites. And so I was invited to talk about new media and how it would affect the church and what you could do with it. And so I figured, well, I might as well record a podcast and and show them that and just tell them about that exciting new technology, because I was really enthusiastic about it. I thought, this is the future of radio. Radio is going to disappear and podcasting is going to take over. I was just basically mimicking exactly what Adam Curry was doing and saying. And so I was like, oh, this is the future and I've got to talk about it. And so that's how it all started. And technically, I didn't have much. I think I had an old mini disc recorder. Remember those from Sony?
Yeah.
Small, very fragile devices. Looked a bit like the old Walkmans. There was this tiny magnetic disc inside that would spin around. The problem, of course, being with all these moving elements and a reading head, it's like a mini hard drive, actually, that you're carrying around, but constructed in a very, it was just very flimsy and would break very, very quickly. And so I had used those during my formation in radio in Rome, and so and that's what I used for my first podcast. And I've been using a mini disc for, well, I guess for a year and a half or 2 years even. I did all my first documentaries because I was just in the streets recording stuff that I saw and describing it. So I didn't start with sitting in a studio. I didn't have a studio. I didn't have a good microphone or a mixer. I only bought that stuff like 2 years later. So I did a lot of mobile podcasting. And then, of course, with all the challenges that posed, because these mini discs, you couldn't download it digitally. You had to hook it up in an analog way and then re-record the whole thing with your computer, then edit it, then post it. It took me like 8 hours for half an hour of show.
Absolutely. And I remember there were times and that you had mentioned the fact that you were in the process of moving data from the mini disc recorder. And of course, I had the old mini disc recorder that was just analog. You had to actually plug in the headphones jack on one end, had two RCAs on the other, and kind of brought it in that way. But you actually had the newer model of the mini disc recorder that had the quote unquote data link.
Yeah, I bought it later. At first, I had the same as you have, but I think it broke down in the middle of I don't know. Usually these things break down when you're doing the podcast of your life. Like you've got your first personal audience with the Pope and he proposes to drink a beer with you, and then at that moment your mini disc breaks. I gotta get a new one, but I didn't have any money, and I think I talked about it on the show, and then the people just started to send me money to buy a new device. And that's how I got to buy one of those digital devices. But again, the technology was so unreliable, and I think the moment that I decided to stop was while I was in France. It was 2-3 years ago now, and I was on vacation and I was every day I was producing like 3 or 4 podcasts. There was so much to see, and I would do my research, go to a place with, prehistorical stuff or a big castle. I would walk around and talk about it and do all these great documentaries. And it was a wonderful region. It was not Normandy, but Brittany in France, which is a fascinating country. And so I had this one mini disc with at least 5 hours of material on it, and it broke. The latch mechanically broke, and the disc got damaged, and I haven't been able to recover all that audio. And there was like a year's worth of shows on there. And that's when I broke down. I was like, I am never, ever, ever going to record anything again with a device that has mechanical parts. Right. I want to switch to a digital device. And that's what I bought a few months later. Got myself one of those digital recorders and have been using that ever since. And that is a lot more reliable.
Exactly. And so for our listeners, just so you know what Father Roderick is using now, he's using the Samsung Zoom H2 recorder, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was the cheapest one.
Yeah.
And I'm Dutch, and we're kind of always looking at our wallet first and then think. And so I think I bought this one while I was at the New Media Expo 2 years ago in Ontario, California, and we went into one of those electronic stores, and it had just come out, and it was $199, which to me sounded extremely cheap. It was like, okay, let's get it. And I don't use it that often anymore because I don't do that many audio documentaries at present. yeah, it's a nice device. The recording quality is very good. Unfortunately, the menu and stuff is not very good. So it's clumsy, and it just drains the batteries very quickly. So it's not ideal, but it works.
Yeah, I've definitely done several reviews of the Zoom H2 recorder. In fact, I got a used one here for anybody listening that wants to buy one. So if you want to contact me, feedback@gspn.tv. I know where you can get a used one. Of course, if you want new ones, I sell those as well. But anyway, so tell us about your studio. When did you get your equipment? What did you start out with? And what's been kind of the progression in the equipment that you've brought in?
Oh, that's very simple. There has been no progression whatsoever. I'm still using the same old stuff that I used when I bought it. I think I must have purchased this, 3 years ago, I think. Yeah, something like that. I just went to a music store. Not in my own town, because we don't have stores that sell this kind of equipment, but to the town of Utrecht, which is not far from here. And I just asked him. I said, I want to have a microphone. I need a microphone that is appropriate for radio recording. I want to have a simple mixer and some cables, and that's it. And so they sold me. They had actually a microphone that I'm still using. I'm talking in it right now. I don't even know. It's a Super Lux thing. Sometimes you can find it on internet on obscure websites. I don't think it's in production anymore. But at the time, they were selling it to me for 19 euro, which is $25.
Wow.
And like, wow, that is cheap. And it looked real. I mean, it had a great look. I was like, okay, at least even if it doesn't sound too well, it looks very professional. So, people are going to take me more seriously. And then the mixer is a Behringer, also one of the cheaper models. I think it was like $120 or something. It's an analog mixer. There's no USB port on it. And I that's the one thing that I've always struggled with, mixers. Even when I was doing my communication studies in Rome, I remember one of the first audio, we had like these, of course, a lot of courses about how to produce good shows and the content side of it. But there was also a technical course where you had to learn, and you were taught the mechanics of how to make it all work. And the one exam that I always flunked, and I never mastered it, was how to operate a mixer. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. It was like, so how do I connect this, and what goes where? And it was too complicated, and I just don't, my internal wiring in my head is not compatible with mixers. And so it was a long, painful process of trial and error that has continued up until today, because the only extra thing that I bought a few weeks ago was a compressor and a noise gate. It's one of these 19-inch racks. And I remember struggling for days with it. I just couldn't figure out how to rig it, how to make it work, and it would sound horrible. And you got online at one point, and I was asking you, so how do I do this? And you had a diagram up on your website that showed how you had rigged it up, so I tried that out. And ultimately, I still don't know how I did it, but it works more or less. And I've learned one thing throughout the years, and it's like, if it works, don't change it anymore. And so right now, that is still the equipment that I use. I think in total, I must have, I guess in hardware, for $300 here, not more. It's very cheap.
Yeah, and for those who are looking to get a really great sounding podcast, and obviously I'm going to just tell everybody and just remind everybody, you can actually podcast for absolutely nothing. If you already have a headset with a microphone on it and you have a computer, you can podcast for free.
Well, yeah, but don't use those.
No.
I mean, invest a little bit in a good microphone.
Exactly.
Your voice is your instrument, so you need good equipment.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily very expensive equipment. I mean, you're selling great stuff, and it's not super expensive, but it is so much nicer to listen to a good sounding voice than these grating voices here. Welcome to website, the hero's website. You got these headsets, and it's horrible, and it's noisy. You don't want that.
No, not at all. And the thing is, I would suggest if people are just thinking about dabbling and it's a hobby for you, kind of just want to talk about your passion or whatever, go ahead and give it a shot, see if you like it. But if you want something good, I think it's great that you started out the way you did, having and I do suggest, by the way, an analog mixer. Just go straight analog. You can always bring it into your computer if you want to do that using the tape out and using some RCA cables and then an 1/8-inch jack on the other end to the line in on your sound card. You're good to go. And in fact, I found that in a majority of the cases, those who actually spend the extra money to get the USB, they're a little bit frustrated when they plug it in and get it all set up and they start hearing ground noise. So that happens about 80% of the time. And then what happens is they've spent that extra money, and I say, okay, now take away the USB cable, go to Radio Shack, buy this cable, and plug it up and see if that fixes your problem, and it fixes it. So, yeah. But yeah, a small mixer doesn't have to be expensive, and a decent microphone, and you don't have to have a high LPR 40. Obviously, Father Roderick's got a great sounding mic. Is yours a condenser mic, by the way?
I think so. Yeah, it is.
You have a.
I'm doing the close mic technique. I like to be I'd like to eat the microphone as if it's an ice cream, and I guess that's why it has a good frequency range and it captures even the lower frequencies of my voice. If I would sit back more, like a lot of podcasters do, I listen to a lot of great podcasts and content, but what always bugs me is that people are like 2 meters, or I don't know how many feet that is, away from their microphone, and so you hear all the echo from their room, and it just sounds so sterile and so, I don't know, empty, and so I wish people would dare to get as close as possible to the microphone, because it gives a much more intimate experience as a listener.
Exactly. And little feedback there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Check 1 2.
Check 1 2.
Oh wow.
Yeah, your voice gets a little bit
weird
looping here. A little bit of disturbance.
I'll tell you what. Let me pause for just 1 second.
Sure.
All right, so we're back, and what I was going to say there real quickly for those who are listening, as far as microphone placement, it really is important to be right up on the mic to get a really good full body sound and to get away from the room noise, the echo room noise and stuff. What I suggest is definitely you'll want a pop filter, which is it's kind of a little bit of a netting that keeps you from popping your P's and your B's. And that should usually be within almost a half an inch from the front of your microphone where you would speak into it. And then I usually suggest being about an inch away from the pop filter with your mouth. And that's pretty much how close you should be. And so that's what Father Roderick's doing. And now folks have heard me say I'm not a fan of condenser microphones. But what Father Roderick's doing to help negate some of the drawbacks of a condenser microphone is he's actually turning his gain down, so I'm not hearing all the background of his room. He's actually right up on the microphone, so it doesn't have to be, the sensitivity is not turned up so loud.
Well, and every microphone has its own dynamics and its own range. And if you go to a person who knows these stuff, it will tell you, well, this has a. Sometimes they will have a graphical design in the manual, and which will show you how much it's capturing and what it does not capture. And if I move away from this microphone, you won't hear me anymore. Also because of the noise gate, of course, it will just shut it down. But in general, it doesn't. It has a very close range, which I like, because it forces me to be close to the microphone and thereby close to the ear of the listener, because that's basically what's happening. The microphone is where your ear is as a listener.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about SQPN. Tell us what SQPN stands for.
Well, it's a bit like GSPN, but then done by a bunch of Catholics. It's the same kind of idea. It's a community, and at the time when I started, I was doing everything myself, and soon I got so excited, and I started to discover other people that were experimenting with podcasting, and I thought, well, what if we just form a platform where people can do this together, and we can bring our audiences into one community, and they can interact, and if they listen to one show and they like it, they can also get to know the other shows. And another motivation for me to start SQPN, which stands for, by the way, the StarQuest Production Network, kind of a fancy name, but it refers to the story of the three wise men that follow the star. So it's a quest for the star, and that's how I see the journey of my listeners. They're all seeking for guidance in their life. They try to find direction, and what we do with our podcast is actually try to be that star and guide people, and instead of forcing them or pushing them, which is a risk because of course it's a Catholic network, so people might think, oh, this is going to be preaching and I'm going to be pushed around and people are going to force me to believe, and whereas I haven't. I've not become a priest because someone pushed me, but because I was attracted to something. I was curious, and that is the kind of attitude that I think our audience has. They're just curious. They want to know more. They want to explore and discover, and so that our approach should be to try to be these guiding stars, but again, without forcing people. And so another motivation for me to start SQPN was, well, we need to improve the quality, because a lot of especially as soon as we're talking religious communication, somehow, I don't know, church people always think that they can do second best, or they can do just a horrible quality and people will still listen. When you look at what religious television is producing, the shows on television, the radio, the talk radio that's out there, it's terrible. It is so lame. It is boring. It is preachy. It is pushing people. It's sometimes also self-centered in the worst case scenario, where it's not really about religion. It's not about God. It's about it's about the host. It's about the network. It's about the money. And really disappointing. And I was afraid that if we don't work together and teach each other how to improve and motivate each other how to be the best as far as communication is concerned, that we would get stuck in this I don't know, secondhand audio and just stuff that won't work, because if it doesn't work on television and radio and in the old media, it will not work in new media either. And so I've always been hammering on the importance of getting not only good sound quality and technical quality. I mean, that's like almost presupposed that you need that. But much more important is, how do you make a show? How do you tell a story? How do you make it entertaining? How do you make a format that keeps people glued to their earbuds? And how do you what is the topic of your show that actually caters to a need of your audience? That's another thing that religious media makers often forget. They think, oh, we've got the message, and well, you're lucky because you found us, and we're going to tell you what you need, instead of asking, so how can I help you? And wait a second, I think I can help you. Here is, from my tradition and my world, something that might be, that inspires me and that might inspire you. So it's a whole different attitude. And that's also, I think, a sign of quality. It is when people can feel this podcaster, this media producer cares about me, answers my questions, helps me in my life. And as soon as someone thinks in your audience, well, this is not about me anymore. The producer doesn't need me, but apparently he needs me for his thing, for his network. Then people will just move away. They won't listen anymore.
Exactly, and then that's the big thing that I've struggled with getting folks to understand. A lot of my people that call me for consulting, they want to know, how can I build my audience to 250,000 people and stuff like that. It's like, well, how many people do you have listening to you now? And the answer ranges. I've got 50 people, I have 180 people, I have 300 people. And I asked them this question: how connected are you to who those people are? How much do you know about that audience? What can you tell me about 10 or 15 people who listen to you, and just a little bit about them? And the answer is always the same. It's like, well, what do you mean? I can't answer everybody's email, and I can't ever do this, and no, I'm not going to get on Twitter, and no, I'm not going to do this, and I'm like, it's going to be tough to grow your audience if all you're looking for is somebody to listen to you.
Yeah, I think the first thing is that you need is a heart. You need to care for people. You need to care for what bothers them, what they live, what interests them. If you don't care, don't start a podcast. If it's only about you and your thing, and you don't need other people, well, why would you podcast? But if you have a heart, if you want to help, if you want to service the community, and even with entertainment, you can do that. I mean, you can do a show about a television program or movies or video games and still care for your audience and try to entertain them. That's caring too. But if you don't even care what and having all these being active in social communities on the web and asking questions and being on Twitter, I think it's part of the toolbox that you need to get to know your audience and to connect with them. And if for you going on to Twitter or setting up a Facebook page or answering your email is a chore, and you would rather just run around and not doing that stuff, then please don't start a podcast, because no one will listen.
Well, or the only people who are going to listen won't stick around, because this community, the folks out there in the social media space, the people who are listening to this stuff, what draws them to this medium, and I think if it would have all been people who didn't care, and podcasting kind of was a mirror, just a time shifted thing of just produced programs from the radio. Then maybe people wouldn't care as much. But what people have come accustomed to is that when it comes to a podcast, sure, it's time shifted and there's some additional benefits there. But really, the fact is that a majority of the case, 99.9% of all podcasts out there, you have some method of accessibility to the person who produces that content.
Yes, yeah. There's a close contact that is possible with the producers, and it's much more of a human relationship, and that is, I think, that the difference with regular media. There is always a huge layer in between you and the producer or the host, and you never get to speak to these people unless you come across them in the supermarket, and then they probably will hate you when you ask for their autograph. And with podcasting, there is this opportunity to connect with each other and to really help each other out. And I think it's a mutual thing. It's not just me as a producer helping my audience, but oftentimes, and I'm pretty sure that you have the same experience, your audience will help you. When you have a question and you Twitter it or you ask it in your show, and people will immediately respond and give you all sorts of tips and advice, and that is wonderful. And once someone has actually actively contributed to your show and helping out the host, then you have a connection. Then you really have shared something, and that is a connection that won't break that easily unless you really drop the ball. But usually when there has been real interaction and someone from your audience has made your life better, and you've done the same for that person, then that relationship is there to stay and it won't go away. And in that respect, I think podcasting is much closer to our overall real life human interaction as well. If you helped out your neighbor and he's helped you out, you're good neighbors and you won't get into a fight. Whereas if you never care for each other, it's you might as well move and the other person won't even notice.
Absolutely, and I can definitely tell you that. Both you and I have had that experience of these close relationships, and I think off the top of my head, I have probably about 300 to 350 people who I know I have that mutual benefiting one another kind of this reciprocity of we have done things for each other and we're here and GSPN.TV I wouldn't be able to do this full time. As a career, if it weren't for right now, as of today, 198 people who are paying us $10 a month to help support this programming, and who have become consulting clients and told other people about me and stuff like that, and the equipment sales that I do. I mean, this community has made this a possibility for me to do this full time, and that's something I never dreamed would be possible this early on in the game.
Absolutely. Although I do believe that there is one risk and that is a risk for all of us podcasters, is that we at one point in our life we might get into a certain rhythm of production, and I'm currently struggling with that a bit. So I'm doing my shows. I know how to do them. I've got my schedule. I've got my regular interactions with my regular audience, and I forget that there might be another huge audience out there that has never heard of the show, and that might become part of that audience if they were invited. And yet I'm so used to my regular interaction with my regular audience that it kind of becomes this confined, closed environment. And so that is always something with podcasting. We're always on in between two worlds. We are niche marketeers, or like we have a niche market. So it's a niche audience of people that choose to listen and choose to stay put and subscribe. At the same time, we also have the scope of our shows is always mass media. We want to do shows that appeal to a large audience. And so what I struggle with is how do I avoid falling asleep and closing the community so that outsiders will not hear from it. It won't feel welcome. And how can I spread the word? And I think that is a totally different communications technique. It's not about the show itself, because the show can be great and great quality and totally balanced after a number of months or years. But it's much more of how do I spread the word about it? How can I get on? How do I get the word out? Do I print flyers and put them in places where people can find them, or do I use word of mouth, or do I go on forums? Do I get on other shows? And I know that you've been experimenting with a lot of these different approaches, and one of the things that I really admired is your constantly your energy to record voice feedback or ask questions to other podcasters and just send it in so that they will play it on their show. Or if you have a new show and you're totally enthusiastic about it, you make a promo and you send it off, and we play it. And that is something I always forget. It's like it's way on the lower end of my list of to do things. But I think you're onto something very important. It's not enough to have a great show. It's also extremely important to try to connect to other audiences out there that might be already listening to similar stuff, and so might have an appetite also for what you are producing. But if they don't know, well, they will never listen.
That's exactly right. And some of and I've used SQPN and my connection with you as a wonderful example time and time again of how to build an audience. And it's not just for the purpose of gaining new listeners, but obviously I am a member of the SQPN community. I'm not Catholic, but then again, I'm not alone in the fact that there are many Protestants who consider themselves to be a part of the SQPN community.
Yeah, sure.
And so, you know, I want to participate in your community just as much as I want to have people participate with me. And so I want to not just benefit my listeners, but I'm a part of this other community, such as Rob Williams and Scott Mintz and Lisa Hendy and just all these other and Paul Camerata and Greg and Jennifer and all these other folks out there. I could Mike Kuipers, Mary Sokup.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
the regulars. Yeah.
I mean, I could probably name off the top of my head at least 75, 80 different people from the SQPN community who I interact with. And my desire is to have those friendships, those relationships with them. Now, not all of those people listen to my content. Some of them test it out from time to time and stuff like that, but that's not a part of it. What I share with them is our passion and our love for SQPN content. And so obviously when I love the fact that, you know, you'll ask something, you know, I remember one thing you had when you first got your iPod Touch, you were trying to sync with Google and calendars and stuff like that. And it's like, I so spent days looking for stuff. And rather than making him wait for days, let me record a 2.5 minute recording about this program, its benefits, its drawbacks, and see how you like it. And I did that for you. And I probably got about 70, 80 different people who emailed me and said, oh my gosh, I heard you on Father Roderick. Your feedback was so valuable. And as a matter of fact, I'm using that now. And I just checked out your shows. I'm going to be listening to you from now on.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And that's how this audience grows. And you're totally right saying it's not just about audience numbers, although I do believe it's important to keep striving for a wider reach. I mean, it is, you need traction in order to survive also, and not just in 1 year from now, but also in 10 years from now. Mm-hmm, we need to build up this audience. And that's true for the whole podcasting community. We have to have these big ideals of reaching a huge part of the world. If we don't, well, this will still remain a very small medium. But we have a strength, and that is that our audience growth is growth through friendships, through relationships, and if we focus on that. It's very easy. Usually when you have one friend, that friend has 20 or 30 other friends. If they have the access to this content, and who hasn't nowadays with internet and broadband and iPods and you name it, then potentially that one friend can bring in 30 more friends, and every of their friends can have another group of people. And I think that is the way that we need to expand our audience. And at the same time, all that is not just a means in itself. It is, again, a tool to help each other and to become friends and to be part of a community, which is something that people desperately desire, to be part of something, to not be alone in their world, not to struggle alone with problems, be it relational problems or technical problems, but to have friends who help you out and to be a friend for other people.
Absolutely. And some other things I think that have helped us in the area of growing our audience and connecting to other people, and that I really suggest that podcasters participate in is this, we've talked about it and touched on it several times tonight, and it's even been mentioned, but the social community, social networking out there that's happening. We've mentioned Facebook. I know you and I both are on Facebook. We're both on Twitter. We both have a Plurk account, and you use that one more than I do.
Yeah.
Of course,
I'm a Plurky.
I think we're both using ping.fm to hit all the status updates everywhere in the world.
I switched to Hello Text because ping was going down so often. So.
Yeah. So we're all, you and I are both hitting all the social networks we can hit. But we're not just hitting them some of them, I don't know about you, but for me, I'm just hitting some of them. But I'm an active participating member of Facebook and Twitter, and occasionally the Plurk over there. But we're also both blogging, sure. Right? So you have where's your blog at, Father Roderick?
It's fatherroderick.com. It's not a blog that is very developed. I aggregate stuff that I post on Twitter, and occasionally, every once in a while, I post an update on what's going on. And right now, I've started a study project, so I'm writing down stuff there about it. It's also it has to do with focus. I think a blog is useful in a way to be more. It's just so that people can find you, but I'm using it almost as a diary, so that over in 3 or 4 years' time, I can go back and reconstruct what I was doing at the time.
Sure.
And I think that has a value. I wish I had done that right from the start, because now I can't remember those early days of podcasting and where I was, and it's much harder to recover that information than it is now. All these information, bits and pieces of information, are aggregated and stored. So it's not the most interesting blog, but it's something that is a support, I think, for the rest.
Exactly, and that's what I would suggest, is that you actively participate in not just building your own community, but you also interact in the larger realm of things. You have to step outside of just podcasting, and of course the conversation that's been happening recently, especially the last 2 episodes that I recorded. Of course, I don't know where this one will fit into the podcast Answer Man yet, but anyway, the episode 89 and episode 90 were very big episodes here at podcastanswerman.com, because episode number 89 was the discussion of the fact that Podang Mango is possibly declaring bankruptcy, giving people 6 days to get all their data moved off their servers and find a new home. And then, of course, episode 90 is an interview I just did with Michael Gohagan, who is now famous for the catchphrase, podcasting is dead, which I so adamantly disagree with him. But, the thing is, I believe the whole discussion of why people think that podcasting is dead is because they just had this weird understanding of what podcasting maybe could be, that it was going to be this mass marketing tool that was going to bring in the advertising dollars. Did you take part in the ADM? Did you sign up for the Association of Downloadable Media?
No, I've never been part of any association or deal, in a way, this is, I think, the natural evolution of things. At first, it starts off with amateurs and are enthusiastic, and then this medium starts to grow. And then, of course, there's a segment of society that thinks, how can we make money off of this, and how can we commercialize this? And after a while, they just drop off again because it doesn't work. It's not turning into the moneymaker that they thought it would be. And then, they disregard the fact that it's something really revolutionary has happened through the medium of podcasting that is here to stay, which is the empowerment of everyone to be able to produce media. And we wouldn't have YouTube if it weren't for podcasting, because it started with podcasting, this idea that, hey, I can be a media producer. And YouTube is not the last and final word. That's going to evolve. And so in years from now, we might have new websites, new media, new techniques. I don't know what. It's hard to predict. Perhaps we'll all do our 3D holographic shows. I don't know. Or we'll just do virtual movies. And there's so much technically that is yet to be explored. But the thing that happened with podcasting, and that is what is never going away anymore, is the fact that media is no longer in the hands of a few people with a lot of money and a lot of technology. With very simple means, you can become a producer, and in the end, this is not going to be about the technical side anymore. It's not even going to be about money. I think what will remain, and that is why we are the last man standing, I think, in a way that a lot of these more commercial podcasters have now abandoned the medium again, and also a lot of these sponsors are dropping off again. But the reason that we are still here and thriving and enjoying this and hoping to do this for years to come is that our strength is in our content and in our relationship with the audience. And that is something that is totally independent of anything else that's going on in terms of distribution and technicalities and money. I mean, we've said it so often in this show, you don't need much money to have a very effective communication going on and to build a huge audience. And it is all about what is happening on a social level. And can you bring something to the table? Can you bring something to people's life that they cannot find anywhere else? And can you do that with passion? Well, if you do that, you're a winner and you're here to stay.
That's exactly right. And so Father Roderick and I both agree podcasting is not dead.
No. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting here. But I've said at one point, it could very well be that the term podcasting is going to fade away. I don't know. Apple might come up with a new device and call it the blurp, and then all of a sudden, everybody has a blurp, and you still have an iPod that is old-fashioned, and then we'll be called blurp casting or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter, but it's much more about what podcasting represents, the stuff that we're actually doing, and you can name it whatever you want. Although I do believe. And I listened to one of your previous shows. You had this interview where, wasn't it? What was it? The guy from the Media Expo said, well, for a while we thought the term podcasting was fading away. But actually,
Tim Berkwin.
Tim, yes. And he said it's here to stay. And, and I believe that's true also. I see podcasting everywhere, the notion, and people associate it. And sometimes they still don't get it. They think it's just an MP3 file as a podcast. But
yeah.
well, who cares?
That's exactly, and it was the word of the year. It's in the dictionary now. The mainstream people are using it, although people don't quite understand it yet. But the thing is, nobody understood what a blog was back when I was creating HTML documents by hand every day.
You're totally right.
And my grandparents know what a blog is.
Yeah, exactly. And well, it's just it has to do with it has to enter culture, and that takes a while. But the adoption of these new media, of podcasting, of blogging, has been so rapid compared to television and radio. I mean, I've been stuck with a black and white television for most of my younger years, and I remember it took my parents years to decide that perhaps color would be a nice addition, because they were like, oh, everybody has these newfangled color televisions. What do you need color for? It's about the content. So in my experience, it took a much longer for all these older media to get established than it has been for newer media, and that gives me a lot of hope. In 5-10 years from now, it won't even be a question. It's just there, and we won't have this discussion in a few years from now. I'm pretty sure.
I'm sure.
It's so widespread.
Well, I do want to say one last thing, and then we'll start wrapping it up here, because I know you got to get out for your morning run. And that is one of the things that both Father Roderick and I have done, I think, bar none, that has brought in a lot of exposure to mainstream people who maybe are not completely techie, and has also benefited us greatly by the growth of our audience. I'm not completely certain about the overall retention rate, but still definitely adding to the bottom line of numbers. And of course, you guys know, both Father Roderick and I have both said numbers aren't everything, but we are interested in growing. And one of the things that Father Roderick has done, and both Stephanie and I have done here at GSPN.TV, is we have found things that, number one, we only podcast about things that we're passionate about. But when we find something that we're passionate about that millions of other people are also passionate about, we share that passion in a podcast that's different than our normal everyday podcast by creating a new show. And that show might be The Secrets of Harry Potter or The Secrets of Star Wars. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Father Roderick?
Yes, I think that is the most effective tool we have to gather a new audience. People are always searching the web, and people have become very good at searching and Googling. And so in the beginning of podcasting, it was enough to have a show. I mean, that was quite special. There were so few podcasters out there that I would listen to anything. I mean, if I would look up the list of podcasts that I listened to at the time, I think only perhaps 1% of those podcasts are still around, because it didn't matter what it was about. It was a podcast, so I listened. Nowadays, people are always searching for something extremely specific. They will go onto iTunes and they will type in Harry Potter or Pirates of the Caribbean, and it will bring them a list of not just podcasts, but also music, videos. And so they might be searching for the soundtrack of the Pirates of the Caribbean, and then pops up this podcast with this picture of a pirate, and oh, what's that? Oh, that is free. That's great. The CD is $9.99, and this is free. Let's give it a listen. If I don't like it, I can always throw it away. And that's how you can very easily build up new audiences. And the thing is, with these speciality shows like you do with the Lost series and the TV show related series, you have to have a real passion for it. If you don't, it's going to be a gimmick and people are going to feel it. You have to be a real fan. So don't try to don't just, I could do The Secrets of Oprah Winfrey, and I'm sure that a lot of people would subscribe to it in the name alone. But I don't care for that show, so I wouldn't be able to do a good show about it.
Right.
But I do care about the Lord of the Rings, and I've been playing the Lord of the Rings online for more over a year now, and I'm very familiar with the books, so I can do a show about that where I just, I sit on my horse in the game, and I just switch on the microphone and I start recording, and I do exactly what I did 2 years ago when I was walking around in the Vatican. I'm just describing and explaining what is happening and what I see, and give people that kind of virtual trip through a certain universe that they love and want to be in. And that is it's almost an automatic success. People will see that, it will pop up on Google, but most of the time people will find me through iTunes. They'll start listening, and before you know it, you've got 10, 20,000 listeners.
Exactly. My daughter is now 9 years old, but when she was 8 earlier this year, we launched a podcast called the Hannah Montana Fan Podcast. Mm-hmm. And her first podcast episode was downloaded by 5,000 people within 3 days. And she immediately, the next week, I think it was within 2 weeks, she immediately jumped up to 8,000 subscribers. And wow. and it was simply because people were looking in children, young adults, children looking for Hannah Montana music, Miley Cyrus music. And right up in the list, it says Hannah Montana Fan Podcast. These kids never heard of a podcast before. And now they've listened to every episode, and they actually are. We've probably got, I don't know, 13, 14, 15 episodes of that out there. We haven't recorded in a couple months. I still get emails every single day from young children out there saying, "I love the Hannah Montana podcast. I listen to every episode all the time." Yeah. And one thing I will say about this, though, with this idea of doing this kind of outreach to gain audience members. Remember the authenticity of what this is all about. If it's just to grow your audience, people are going to catch on to that. And it has, and like Father Roderick said, and stuff, it has to be something you're passionate about. And recognize that when you create one of these podcasts, there will be a community there. Those people will want to interact with you, and they will want to interact with each other if you allow them to. And if you do not interact with them, those people will come and they'll listen, and they'll quickly go away. So it doesn't mean anything if you're not willing to stand behind and be a participant in that community and lead it and to develop relationship.
Sure. And some final tips about this. If you want to do a show about a popular TV show or a movie, and you see that there are already 40 podcasts about that show, then either you have to be really the best of the best, but most likely one of those shows is going to be really, really good. So you have to ask yourself, can I compete with that? Because, if you're just one of many, then it will the audience will get diluted. And people will, how do they know that you're the best of those shows? So I would say just look for shows that you like and love, and but at the same time, also check out the competition, what the competition is doing. And another tip, and this is very down to earth, but has proven to be extremely important: take care of your artwork and your website. Mm-hmm, Make sure that your icon in iTunes looks awesome and is like, wow. I see so many horrible pictures out there in iTunes, and I don't listen to it. It's for instance, there was one of the winners of the podcast awards this year. And I heard about I'd seen the icon in iTunes. I was like, gosh, this is done by kids or something. It was horrible. It was a little blue background and some white boxes on it. And it was the Manager's Tools podcast. And someone else told me, no, this is a great show. You got to listen. It's awesome. And it will teach you anything about management and meetings. And it's like, wow, I would have never guessed that from the artwork. Just my shifting process was going, oh, I don't like the artwork. This is stupid. I'm not going to listen to that. And so I cannot stress enough how important it is to have good artwork, to take care to make a great looking website, because that's the first impression, and that is what matters for a lot of people now. Of course, we hope to involve them more into the show so that they will see beyond that. But people shift through this information based on, does it look good? And so take care of that. And if you can, motivate your audience to write reviews on iTunes as well. That also helps. Absolutely.
Well, Father Roderick, again, thank you for participating in this 24-hour marathon with me. And I just want to say it's been an honor to have you as what I consider to be a very close friend, and also as somebody that has inspired me in so many ways. So I appreciate you very much.
We'll keep doing that, and you keep inspiring your audience, and I'm part of your audience, so we help each other.
Absolutely. Folks, you can find Father Roderick over at SQPN.com, and it stands for the StarQuest Production Network. And folks, we just want to remind you that we release a lot of episodes here of the Podcast Answer Man for free. If you want to make sure that you get every episode of Podcast Answer Man, including all this wonderful information on how to improve your show, become a gspn.tv Plus member. You can learn more about that over at gspn.tv/plus. Until next time, Father Roderick, thank you for listening, and God bless you all. We'll talk to you soon.